On a cluster of islands deep in the Bay of Bengal live a group of people who have hidden away from the modern world. For centuries, they fought off anyone who tried to intrude. Marco Polo called them cannibals. Their origins are a mystery. Where they came from, how long they have been here, who they are, no one knows. But could these islanders hold the key to the mystery of our own origins? For the first time in more than a decade, an expedition sets out to the Andaman Islands to unravel the secrets of a people whose past could solve the riddle of human evolution. The ancient tribes of the Andamans have always mystified explorers. They live in the heart of Southeast Asia, yet are very small and very dark-skinned. They look like African pygmies. How or when they came to these islands is a puzzle. It's thought they may have been washed ashore here hundreds of years ago from a slave ship. But new evidence suggests another explanation. Erika Hagelberg extracted DNA from Andaman hair samples gathered 100 years ago. She realized that the Andaman Islanders could be far more important than anyone had ever imagined. She had discovered what seemed to be a group of hunter-gatherers caught in a time warp. Believing that the Andaman Islanders could even be the living ancestors of modern mankind, she set out to solve the mystery of their origin. She realized their past could be a vital link to understanding the evolution of modern man. Biochemist Erika Hagelberg has been involved in a number of high-profile forensic identification cases. 4 years ago, she came across a huge collection of hair samples gathering dust in a drawer. They had been brought back from the Andaman Islands by pioneering anthropologist Radcliffe Brown in 1908.
One of my students was interested in the forensic implications of hair analysis. I don't even remember why we chose the Andaman hair. I'd heard that it was important, and I knew about the Andamans through Conan Doyle's The Mark of...
chain of 200 islands, very close to the Southeast Asian peninsula. They became part of India when the British left in 1947 and are now ruled from Delhi. Erika and her student set out on the laborious process of breaking down the outer layers of hair to unleash the trapped DNA. As she worked, she too became intrigued as to how a group of people who were clearly African had ended up so far from home. Once they had succeeded in extracting the DNA, the next stage was to build up charts, comparing Andamanese genetic codes with similar peoples.
DNA sequences by themselves are not terribly useful. You have to compare them with sequences from other parts of the world. So I was finding the biggest possible surface that I could find to put some of these sequences up on the wall. We had African populations, Asian populations, also oceanic populations, New Guinea Highlanders, Polynesian people, people from mainland Asia. So we start building these big family trees of human sequences.
As she plotted the sequences against each other, a story of a unique people began to emerge.
The look of all these trees told us that the Andamanese belonged to one of the earliest groups to migrate out of Africa. That was our first impression, and we were quite excited. They fitted close to the Africans and not too far away from the New Guinea Highlanders, who are also a very ancient population. Our results really confirmed the general idea that there was a big migration of people out of Africa.
She could see that the Andaman Islanders not only looked like African pygmies, they were genetically very closely related to the Africans of today. Based on her original analysis of the DNA passed through the female line, Erika felt confident that the Andaman Islanders confirmed the out-of-Africa theory, that we are all descendants of one group of modern humans who left Africa about 100,000 years ago. But other groups of humans left Africa up to 1 million years earlier. A highly controversial theory argues that these groups might have continued to evolve separately and might even have interbred with modern humans when they arrived.
Just go all the way, and we can use the keys, and Dr.
Lalji Singh's been working on the Y chromosome, passed from father to son, and his results have pitched him and Erica into a debate about evolution that's raged for decades.
So this tree is probably based...
Lalji Singh's work on the male line has revealed a very ancient Asian marker not present in Erica's data.
All these people belong to this one branch. It comes out over there, and all of those people are Africa. And then far away here, connected by this long branch, we've got this big, enormous cluster in which there's a cluster of Andamanese there and other Asians.
It's an extraordinary finding because that Asian marker is even older than some of the African markers. So far, Lalji has very few samples to work on. But if his findings can be proven, it could mean that the people of the Andaman Islands might have archaic human genes which survived perhaps from a time before the most recent modern humans came here.
We're so comfortable with that out of Africa. And then I got this email out of the blue on the 27th of December saying that your Y chromosome haplotypes were Asian. And I was just running around, what does this mean? So we've got this nice out of Africa mitochondrial DNA picture, deep branches, but still quite easily out of Africa, but we've got pre-African Y chromosomes. What does that mean?
Lalji Singh believes his data could throw the whole idea that man evolved in Africa into question. In any case, it's thrown doubt on Erica's original conclusions. Without more DNA samples, they can't prove their radically conflicting theories one way or the other.
Why don't you forget for a moment that human being originated in Africa? Other possibilities could have originated somewhere else in the world.
I agree completely.
So let's assume that somewhere else in Asia that a human being originated. And from there went to Africa, then you can interpret the same results which they have.
But we still have the original origin of archaic humans in Africa. But if we say that we've got an original migration of humans from Africa, Homo erectus, and then ancient lineages in Asia, doesn't that support a multi-regional origin of modern humans?
Erica, who knows, this unique population of Andamans might reveal that both Eve and Adam who originated here, and this was the Garden of Eden.
Well, I don't need any convincing that this is paradise.
2 weeks, and there's no sign from the local ministry. After a wait of many years, Lalji finally gets his DNA samples, which will help test the two conflicting theories of human evolution. His plan is to sample every male in the community to complete his picture of the Y chromosome. For Erica and Lalji, this expedition has turned into a great success. They've succeeded in getting their samples and even made it to the tribal territory, a first for any research team in half a century.
From the scientific point of view, this trip's been a great success, that you were able to go in there and collect these extra samples.
We have collected now 46 additional samples, and that is quite substantial considering the fact that total Ongi's number is about 100.
But what does the new DNA reveal about the origins of the Andaman Islanders and how they fit into the story of human evolution?
Our conclusions on the Andamanese, we can say that they challenge some of the views of a straight out of Africa migration of people in the last 100,000 years, because they support perhaps the view that there's a very ancient component of people who in Asia that survived to modern times.
Now, we take it forward on just one more year. So as recently 2009, we were still talking about complete replacement with respect to mitochondrial DNA. The technology in DNA sequencing has gotten to the point where it becomes more feasible to sequence whole genomes, in particular genomes of extinct forms. And the complete genome sequences were obtained in draft form from Neanderthals, as well as this mystery form called Denisova from a molar and a finger bone. And I don't want to go into the details, as I said, but the bottom line here is that non-Africans and a group from Australasia or Oceania contain a small amount of their genome that directly matches the Neanderthal and the Denisova genome respectively. And in order to explain that interesting pattern of sharing, it was suggested that there were two interbreeding events. One, as anatomically modern humans first got out of Africa into the Middle East, mixing with Neanderthals. As second interbreeding event somewhere in Southeast Asia, just before anatomically modern humans made it into New Guinea and Australia some 40,000 years ago. And then a second migration from the Middle East to East Asia without interbreeding with Denisova. Now, these draft genomes provided compelling evidence for interbreeding, but it was not the first evidence we had for interbreeding. Going back to 2005, Dan Garrigan in my lab, a postdoc in my lab, was leading a project to look at genetic variation in an interesting locus on the X chromosome. And when we reconstructed the gene tree for this region on the X chromosome, we found a gene tree that was quite distinct in many ways from the mitochondrial gene tree. For example, there are two major clades. One clade is entirely restricted to Asians, and the other clade is in Asians and everyone else, including Africans. Most of the loci we look at look just like this part of the clade, where there's an African outgroup and everybody else on the rest of the branches. But in this case, it was Asians as the outgroup. The root was in Asia, and the time to the root was about 1.5 million years. So it's interesting to think if we had discovered this kind of pattern before we discovered the mitochondrial pattern, how we might think differently about human origins from a genetic perspective. But in this case, nevertheless, we hypothesized that this pattern arose through a process of interbreeding as anatomically modern humans got into East Asia, perhaps mixing with Homo erectus, and this little piece of the genome surviving in modern humans today. But interestingly, as many years later, as the Neanderthal draft genome came out, we compared the sequence of this divergent lineage to the Neanderthal genome, and it matched the Neanderthal genome. So we were correct in saying that there was introgression of this divergent branch, but we were not correct in that it turns out it was likely a Neanderthal that offered this branch into the genome of modern humans. Now, I also have a grad student who is finishing up, who has, in his graduate career, discovered a few more loci that looked very much like this, one which had an Oceanian outgroup and another one that looked something like this. He had suggested to me that these are other examples of interbreeding and introgression. And I said, well, you've got to do a lot to prove that. But meanwhile, the draft genomes came out. He was proven correct. In fact, one case it was Neanderthal admixture, and the other case it was Denisovan admixture. Well, so just to update where we stand today, now we have to add another admixture process in Africa, along with the two outside of Africa. And I just wanted to end by saying something about what kinds of models are supported by the genetic evidence. Certainly, we can no longer believe that the right replacement model is correct. Even after 25 years of dominating as a paradigm, it seems to have fallen. And the new models that seem to be relevant are models that were also proposed many years ago based on fossil data. I think that this is probably the most reasonable model. It's a replacement model with hybridization, but I'll skip over that, as there doesn't seem to be a single location for transition in Africa. There's no single Garden of Eden. There's transitional forms that are spread very vastly across the continent. Therefore, there's certainly the opportunity for gene flow among these morphologically diverged groups over a long period of time. And I really like the idea, Chris already described it, where you have the multi-regional model now restricted to Africa, so at a different geographic scale, but these traits that make us anatomically modern could have been flowing along this trellis network of gene flow among these morphologically diverged groups for quite some time until the anatomical form was assembled in a single package somewhere in Africa. And I really like the idea. And I think before we'll really fully be able to address this from a genetic perspective, we need to find the genes that encode these anatomically modern traits and look at their evolutionary histories. So I'll leave it at that.